when the police held a news conference about a major case that's still in flux, especially like, this Spencer and Monique Tepe case. The people on my side of the cameras, we focus on two things. We focus on what the investigators say, and then we focus on what they don't say. Sometimes it's louder. In the don't say column, when police in Columbus, Ohio faced reporters today for the first time since the Tepes were killed, they declined to reveal a motive. Why a vascular surgeon from Illinois allegedly gunned down his ex-wife and her current husband 2 states away nearly a decade after they parted. Why? Chief Elaine Bryant did call the murders a, quote, targeted domestic violence attack. That's pretty telling. And she did say police recovered weapons, plural, from Dr. Michael McKee's penthouse condo in Chicago, including the alleged murder weapon. And how do police know that? Well, Banfield viewers, you were tipped off to that on Monday during my interview with former prosecutor Matt Murphy. Here's what he said.
What's really interesting, Ashleigh, is there is a system known as NIBIN, and that's the National Ballistics database, where they take shell casings, assuming it's a semi-automatic handgun. We don't know that yet. But the shell casings that get expended on those, they're like DNA for firearms.
Now fast forward to this morning in Columbus, Ohio. Here is that same chief I was talking about, Elaine Bryant.
And there's a preliminary link from our NIBIN to one of the weapons that ties it to the homicides.
Blinking, you missed it, but she said there's a preliminary link from our NIBIN, that database. NIBIN, it stands for National Integrated Ballistics Information Network. I know, it's a mouthful. NIBIN's easier. And as Matt Murphy said, it's basically a library, like a database that can trace bullets and shell casings back to the gun that fired them. For now, the make and model of the gun that killed the Tepes is still in the we're not saying column, but this might, however, answer the question as to why it was ATF agents who actually made the caller, the ones who arrested Dr. Michael McKee last Saturday near the Rockford, Illinois hospital where he worked. As it turns out, the NIBIN database is an ATF creation. That happened back in 1999. Something else that we learned today. A shadowy person of interest seen on surveillance video in the alley behind the Tepes' home in the time of the murders. Well, according to the police, it's him. It's Dr. Michael McKee. They told us that today, although we all wondered, didn't we? There's so many interesting things I'm going to tell you about, like the way he's walking, the height, the gait, the stride, all of that. It's a dead giveaway if you know what to look for. But now I want to turn to something that struck me as very interesting in today's police press conference. One answer that was definitive and one answer that wasn't, but spoke volumes nonetheless. The definitive answer was that there have been no police reports made about Dr. McKee stalking or harassing Monique Tepe before the murders. That, at least, was said about that house. No reports from that house. But when reporters asked if there had been any communications between Dr. McKee and Monique Tepe, this was the answer the police chief gave.
Can you tell us if McKee and Mrs. Tepe had any contact leading up to this incident, months, weeks?
There are some things that we can't share for investigative purposes, but what I can tell you again is that we didn't have any reports or anything linked to that specific location as it relates to the ex-husband and Monique Tepe.
Okay. So no reports ever came from 1411 North 4th Street about Dr. McKee, but could they have come from any other locations about Dr. McKee? Don't know. And notice how the chief hedged on the question of communications. She said there are some things we cannot share. She didn't say no reports of communications. So the silence to me speaks volume. Is it possible there were contacts between McKee and Monique, or maybe even between McKee and her husband, Spencer Tepe? I think we're going to find all of this out in the days, weeks, and months ahead. We may hear more details earlier, too, at Dr. McKee's first court date in Ohio. This was just his quick appearance, first time before a judge. He's in Winnebago County. It's not where he's going to be tried. It's where they picked him up. It's where his hospital is in Rockford, Illinois. But he's going to be extradited, right? He's got a date scheduled in Ohio. Actually, it was scheduled for Monday of next week, but they've already now pushed it to Friday, the 23rd of January. Apparently, whoever is in charge of moving him can't do it quickly, even though he waived extradition. And even though he allegedly made that drive himself, just 6 hours it took him, give or take, between Christmas and New Year's. Joining me now with her expertise on all of this is former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer. Okay, Jennifer, I thought of you right away after the press conference, and I asked myself, I wonder what Jen thought of that. So I'll ask you, what does Jen think of that?
Well, I'll tell you what, I agree with you. Her not answering some of those questions right off the bat and being very specific made me think they have so much information related to an intersection between these two at some point before the murder. Maybe that was that proximal event I always talk about that happened that ignited this action that he took.
Talk to me about NIBIN, because I've always been under the impression that NIBIN, again, this sort of ballistics dating site, right, for lack of a better description, really got weapons that are out there from bad people doing bad things that already got arrested, and those weapons went into the register. This guy, Dr. Michael McKee, is clean as a whistle. He doesn't have a scratch on his record.
You know, when you think of using NIBIN, that's typically in gang investigations and violent crime investigations where you don't have any clue who somebody committed it, but you have these casings that could connect to another crime. That's what we think of using NIBIN for. But the fact that there is an intersection here tells me that perhaps he bought this weapon at a pawn shop. Perhaps he bought it from a friend of a friend who somehow was connected to some time where that weapon was used, and NIBIN considered it important.
For folks who watch the show on a regular basis, I think they're going to know the answer to this question, but for folks who are kind of getting into the true crime space, a lot of people would wonder, why are the police so tight-lipped? They say they caught their guy, he's arrested, he's not getting out on bail. What's the big deal?
This is a big deal. Right now, they are looking at interviewing witnesses, anybody who saw or knew anything or understood that there were any issues. The minute you start releasing details about the investigation, you no longer know whether the individual you're interviewing is providing details that they really knew, or was it something they heard on the news. So it's very important that they stay tight-lipped at this stage.
And also that ever-present preservation of a prosecution. You know, if they, look, Koberger, they didn't get to prosecute him. It was just a deal. But if this goes to trial, you need to really hold your cards close to your vest. You got to share the discovery with the defendant, but you don't got to share it with Ashleigh, you know. So I am super curious about the confirmation today that the police said it was Dr. McKee, in their words, that skulking figure in the back alley. What is your estimation from your law enforcement background on how they determined that that was him?
Well, first of all, always, he has had this extremely unique gait. When I say always, I mean in all this film we've seen of him, from the beginning of time, he had that left foot that curved in, kind of pigeon-toed, has a very long gait, and you could tell he was a big man, not a small man. In addition, look at his clothing. It is unique to him, and I believe it was likely the clothing and maybe even that shoe tread that you touched on a few segments ago that led them to know this is him.
So at the end, I'm just going to tell the viewers, watch the very end what he does with his face. And he looks away, takes his hand up, kind of covers his face, pulls the hoodie down. I mean, that's a big telltale, too. Look, in cold weather, I do that, too. I grew up in Winnipeg. But if you are leaving a murder scene and you know there are cameras, this is kind of the behavior you might actually emit.
Exactly, Ashleigh. From the beginning, when this person of interest, you know, was identified by law enforcement, to me, this person was so important. He was right near the crime scene at the time of the crime, and the way he acted like he was trying to hide and was guilty of something. So definitely a person of interest, a suspect.
So my guess, Jennifer, is there's a team of detectives still working this case and fanning out to try to figure out more material that will help prosecutors. They don't have to prove motive, but juries really want it. Who are they going to be interviewing to try to determine if there was, well, we know there was, but the extent of the acrimony between Monique Tepe and her ex-husband, Dr. Michael McKee. How will they find all that?
Well, they are going to start with everyone, Ashleigh. They have to go clear back years from when they were first married, identify mutual individuals, try to figure out if there was any sort of pattern of domestic abuse that then led to this. Obviously, they've been divorced now 9 years, but did he express to anybody the anger and resentment that he must have harbored if indeed he committed this crime? And what did she say? Has she told anybody about her concerns about Mr. McKee? Was that something that, she left on the table for them? All of this is going to be explored by law enforcement.
Every time I see that wedding picture, I'm just so sad because she just seemed so happy in this new life. And then there are those two children who don't have those two parents anymore. Jennifer Coffindaffer, always appreciate this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashleigh.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.